Oh gosh. Good evening, everyone. Hello. We're back with some more painting. Um, I don't know, just a quick recap. We started painting these like snake warriors from Reaper Minis. Kind of talking about like just sort of the basics of painting. And we're gonna sort of keep that up this week. We're gonna probably spend some time focused more on like highlighting and um, shading, kind of get those details right. And if I'm feeling crazy enough, probably start working on like some of the scale work um, and just some of the colors that I'm planning on using for the scales and for some of the shading and stuff. So yeah, guess I'll actually I'm going to start with the Um, so I'm gonna go back to these like front scales. Um, what I did last week is I took the warm brown. Um, actually, wait, is that? Yeah, I took the warm brown. Had to make sure based on the different colors I see. And then I shaded it with a wash. This week, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the brown that I have over here that looks really gross. That's because some of the paint and the pigment medium have separated. But I'm going to mix some of this brown color here with this olive flesh and kind of use that to create sort of like a low tone, a mid tone, and a high tone. So go ahead and shake up my paint as usual. And just gonna put a big old blob here onto my palette, which this is the same palette I used last week. I just threw it in the fridge, kept it nice and cool, made sure that basically no water evaporation from the sponge, and that basically keeping it cold so no mold would grow. Because if you just kind of let this go, mold will appear on your sponge, and at that point, you basically have to kind of just get rid of the sponge. So I'm just gonna like mix this up and get a nice sort of like middle tone between that brown and the olive flesh. So that looks about good. It's kind of what I want. And so I'm gonna just move that out of the way. So we'll start working on highlighting. So I guess like I mean, before we hopped on, we were talking about horror films. So have you watched any new ones this spooky season?
Technically, it was before spooky season for me. But I was talking about it with Brad. I saw Talk to Me.
How was that?
I love it, and I loved it so much I went and bought the Blu-ray when I saw it.
Okay.
um, so if you don't really know the premise, it's teenagers getting possessed as if they were getting high off drugs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I love when horror movies try to do a drug allegory.
Yeah, it does it very, very well.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, because I went into it 100%. Like there were a bunch of YouTubers that I watched that are movie reviewers, and a lot of them were like, "I'm not gonna ruin this. You need to go see it." And they were like, "We'll make a full length review later, but like just go and see this movie before I spoil it for you." And I decided to do it, and I got to watch it in a theater that was completely empty. So
Nice.
that was fun. First experience with that, and I loved it because I could react as much as I want and didn't bother anybody around me. But yeah, no, it's actually one of the few. I was telling Brad this. It's one of the few teen teen based horror movies that actually seem to get teenagers right.
That's good.
Yeah.
I do though enjoy when they get teenagers completely wrong, and you're like, I've never seen a teenager act like this or do
Yeah,
anything that these kids are doing. I can't wait till they get gutted like fish.
I know, right? I feel like I almost wonder how much of that is purposeful, that they purposefully write the teenagers bad so you wish that they have a horrifying death by the killer. And then other times I just wonder, are they just that tone deaf?
I think it's probably just a matter of like they don't want it too realistic.
Yeah, I guess. But make it more realistic, please.
Yeah, kids can handle it. Well, teens can handle it.
Yeah. Well, this one was rated R. Like, I had to be carded to even go see the movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been carded for a movie.
I hadn't before that time, and I went, I can't tell if I just look young or if this is just something they have to do.
That's fair. Yeah, I guess, I'm trying to remember if there's any movie that I've had to be carded for. I mean, I've seen rated R films in the like before I was 18, and that was always like seeing them with my parents,
Yeah.
but I can't remember any time that I've been carded to see a movie since then.
I just didn't even know. Oh, hey, Nick's Nocturne. We were talking
Oh,
about Talk to Me. So,
which is not one I've seen.
yeah. I
Is that
definitely suggest
recent?
watching it. Yeah, it came out this year.
Okay,
Like August or September.
all right, cool. I will. Oh, well, I don't think it's in theaters around me anymore. If it,
No. I
but
think I saw it. I think it was like only showing like once or twice a week recently up
ah,
here, so I think it's probably on its way out if it's not already.
okay. Well, that does give me a little hope that it might be on a one of the multitude of streaming services
Yeah.
that are out there
Oh yeah,
before
for
the end
sure.
of Halloween.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
an A24 film,
oh,
so
okay.
yeah.
They put out some good stuff, that A24.
I know. They're becoming one of my favorite distributors for movies.
Yeah. Oops, that's a little bit more watered down than I wanted. Yeah, I haven't really watched anything recently, like within the last year or two. Actually, no, wait. I watched Barbarian this year.
How was it?
Um, it was really good. Um, it had a lot of like twists in how I thought it was going to go. Um, it's got a pretty good cast. It's got, was it Bill Skarsgård and Justin Long are in it, and
Interesting.
yeah, um, and it was gory and um dark, and had a nice little like commentary about like the decline of suburban America in terms of it. Like, movie takes place in Detroit, so
Ah.
but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good horror movie. But I've also, most of the stuff that I've seen is either like really old horror, like, oh god, I threw Nosferatu on the other night, mostly as background um watching because I was at a Halloween party,
Mm.
and my mother-in-law was like, "Hey, put something on, but we're gonna turn the volume down so we can have music going." And I was like, "Okay, sure." Figured silent film would be a good
Yeah.
a good one for that. Um, and then I mean, like, let's see, Exorcist, and which I've seen before.
Yeah.
But I watched Friday the 13th Part 2. Um, which I understand why it is important to slasher flicks, and I understand it's why it's important to the Friday the 13th franchise, but that movie is not good.
No, 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 no. No, nothing past the first one I think is any good, really. I made the mistake of watching the fourth one with my friends the other night on Friday the 13th because, you know,
This is what you
tradition.
gotta do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tradition. And we were watching it and we were just riffing on it the whole time.
It's it's like, how do you make the first one and then you just fail to like improve upon it, to iterate on it in any regard?
Oh, yeah. I love Nick's Nocturne's response. Wait, you're telling me Jason X isn't a cinematic masterpiece? No,
Actually,
no,
that
it's not. Please stop. But it is better than Jason Takes Manhattan. Oh, jeez. I did recently see. The problem is that I haven't been keeping up with watching horror movies during the spooky season, but I've been watching them before the spooky season just because I love
Mhm.
horror movies in general. And I finally got around to watching the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh,
It makes me uncomfy.
yeah. It's it's so good though because it's like it's so low budget and it's
Mm-hmm.
so like it's environmental storytelling is really good. The way that it just sort of ends,
Yeah,
like I really enjoy the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
yeah, it is. Uh, by far, in one of my favorite horror movies that I've seen, and I can understand why Tiny Elena didn't want to watch it. Like growing up, because my brother had a horror themed birthday party
Oh man.
when he was in high school, and he's 8 years older than me, so it started off fine and good, and it started off with the original Dawn of the Dead. Then it moved into like The Grudge and The Ring, and uh, I think one of the Friday the 13th movies, and then Mom shooed me to bed before they put on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I remember I had to like get a glass of water, or a snack or something, and I come out and I was like, took one look at Leatherface, and I went back in my room.
Yeah, it is um a movie that just there are a few horror movies that or slasher flicks. I'm like, yeah, I'd probably let a kid like a 10-year-old watch this.
Yeah.
Um, but that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not one of those.
No, no. Um, but it's also kind of even more bonkers when you look up like the trivia about the movie. Um, because like the dinner scene is disgusting when you look up
Mm-hmm.
like what actually happened.
Yeah.
Like it was so hot in that room and they had blackout curtains, and like the food is rotting on the table. Like I think the one of the actors said in an interview at one time that he was like hit by so badly by heat stroke that he actually was like getting to the point where he was getting so angry that he actually thought he was going to kill the girl.
Oh,
Like
jeez.
it's freaking insane.
Yeah.
Nick's
Rel-
Nocturne says, I've always been partial to the Nightmare on Elm Street movies because they take place in Ohio, relatively close to where I'm from.
well, as someone who also lives in Ohio, we are a horror movie.
I feel that way about Pennsylvania.
I mean, there's like we were driving through we were driving through like a small town a couple weeks ago, And we just had this thought, we're like, it's we could be in the suburb where Halloween takes place. Like there's just the big houses and the large yards, and there's like kids biking around because traffic's not very fast,
Yeah.
and we're like, Michael Myers could just be like right around the corner, and it wouldn't seem out of place.
Yeah.
And as Nick says, yes, we are literally the children of the corn. It was Hudson. Yeah,
Uh,
Hudson was the town that we passed through.
it was gorgeous and definitely Haddonfield. I think that was like the beauty of slasher flicks back then, and it's like I don't know, maybe this is why slasher doesn't really work as a concept anymore. In our day and age, is we're kind of numb to all the true crime because of podcasts and you know
Yeah.
different TV channels that play like Dateline and stuff like that, but like the beauty of slasher flicks back in the 60s, 70s and 80s is just like it was so normal to just go around unattended,
Oh
riding your
yeah.
bike into the next town or even just like from your house in the middle of nowhere into town to get like a couple of groceries or go to the comic book shop or whatever. And it's like the beauty of slashers is just the absolute fear of like anybody. Like, granted, all of the slashers, in the 80s and whatnot had supernatural abilities, but it didn't make it any less scary. Like, Michael Myers could just be a dude. Like, I mean, for
Yeah.
the most part, he was a dude, but I think that's what makes Scream so great is, like, they didn't have supernatural powers. That was just a dude in a costume.
An incredibly genre savvy dude in a costume,
Yes.
which is what makes that movie series, at least the first like two or three, work really well.
Yeah. I haven't seen anything past two.
Three's not bad, but I think two is like one of the rare sequels that I think does it better than the original. And I mean, I'm not like degrading Scream One at all. Scream One, I think, is a fantastic breakdown of the slasher genre.
Yeah.
But I think like Scream Two is like a nice twist, kind of like how Friday the 13th Part One was sort of a twist. Like you didn't really expect the killer of that movie to be who it was.
Yeah.
So what I'm kind of doing right now, just sort of picking out a couple of the scales. What I did is a couple of passes with the different browns, and then just the like highest light color of that olive flesh, just to catch the edge of the scales. So this will get smoothed down again when I give it another wash, to kind of help fade all of that in. Now, as like if you're getting a little bit better and you're kind of painting more and more, as I completely mess up the scale, you can make these transitions a lot smoother. I'm going for rougher transitions just because it's a little bit easier on my eyesight and on my hands. And again, when I hold this like 3 feet away, it's going to look still pretty good. Have you, so, okay, so obviously love horror movies. Do
Yes.
you play any horror video games?
I do. A lot of them are typically indie games just because
Mm-hmm.
I love the hidden gems that are in indie games, but I've played I've played Layers of Fear, which I didn't hate. It wasn't scary really. Like there were some scares that got me, but it wasn't really scary. I just liked the environment of Layers of Fear. I thought the people who created like the house and the way it changed every time you turned around was great. I've played some Resident Evil games. I never played the original Resident Evil game.
Okay.
Or like I didn't play 2. I played a bit of 3 on my friend's PlayStation, a bit of 4, and I played through 5 on the PC with a friend of mine. But I'm trying to think, what other horror games have I played? I've played quite a bit. I never played the Silent Hill games because I didn't have
Same.
a console, but I've watched playthroughs of them and I've
Mhm.
like looked into the lore and everything, and it is one of my favorite franchises that I've never played.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, I uh, I picked up a horror game a couple years ago, called Man of Medan.
Oh,
It's by the devs that did Until Dawn,
yep.
and I didn't pick up the game that they did, one of the two games they did last year. But basically ever since I got it, I pick up the new game in that series and
Yeah.
play through it with my wife. We just like, okay, who's gonna, pick the character that you're gonna play as, and we'll see who's got the most alive at the end.
Yeah.
We're doing a playthrough of The Quarry right now,
Oh,
which
okay.
is their like summer camp slasher flick.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that one. That one I didn't. I haven't played it, but there's a couple of YouTubers that they
Mhm,
always play the dark picture stories and games from that developer together, just for the same reason, like they want to see who wins and who dies.
mhm.
Um, and they I did not like the quarry as much, but I thought that it did pretty well at doing the classic slasher
Yeah,
characterizations of the teenagers. I thought they did a really good job of that. Um, I think uh, the devil made me do it is
that's the one I didn't get.
yeah, that's the newest one. That's the one about H.H. Holmes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that one I thought was a little weak.
Okay,
Cool idea. A little weak as far as story is concerned.
that's fair.
Little
I
Hope
like.
I think is my favorite.
Yeah, I was just about to say I really liked Little Hope.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite of that series.
Yeah, I really liked Little Hope, and I thought Until Dawn was a great step. Also, you're painting off screen if you are.
No,
Oh, okay.
I was prepping colors.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to make sure.
Yep. Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to figure out the sort of color scheme that I want for the scales.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm just gonna kind of just sort of pick out the tips of the scales in sort of a brighter green. Now, if I was smarter about this, I'd probably just dry brush it. And I might still do that. I've got another one over there, but at the moment, just kind of putting a little dab of green onto each of these scales is about what I want to do. Because what it's like, how hard is it gonna? Um, so like what I'm hoping will happen is as you can see here, I've already kind of created, there's like two very distinct types of greens here. So I'm hoping that when I wash this again to sort of dull the bright green that I have here, that it will kind of all nice and tidy up, and it'll just kind of create a nice little shaded effect. But not being super neat here because there's a lot of scales, and again, I'm just dotting them. I believe that's the official painting term.
Yeah.
I I love horror movies. I love horror literature. Um, I am the biggest baby when it comes to horror video games.
That's fair.
It's something about
I
being in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I will say the only I've played through a few horror games. Like I used to stream and I'm hoping to do it again this Halloween after I think I have one show on Halloween, and then after that I don't have anything else, and I think after that show I'm going to kick off my stream again, and I'm going to do some horror games. But the one I chickened out on the most was Outlast.
Okay.
I got an hour and a half in that game and it broke me. I cried on stream. I could not do it. It scared me so bad.
Oh man.
It's like, and the funny thing is like I've watched people play it multiple times. I've watched multiple different YouTubers play through Outlast, and it's like the scare still got me then, but now like I'm hardened to it. But as soon as I open the game and I try to play it, it's like PTSD. I can't. I cannot play that game.
I'm about halfway through Resident Evil 7 right now because I can really only play it in like 20-minute bursts.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not playing it on like the hardest difficulty. The game's not particularly hard in general. I've seen enough like playthroughs of it. Should be fine. And I'm like, nope, nope. Heart's pounding. I've
Yep.
walked down this hallway. I need to go out and get some fresh air and never touch this game again.
I was
And then like,
so happy when they made that game and they brought Resident Evil back to the like spooky horror roots.
mm-hmm,
Oh,
it's really good.
yeah, because Resident Evil 6, we try not to talk about. Nyx Nocturne says you literally saw me chicken out over a scene where nothing happened. You're the second biggest baby.
I will say I don't remember that scene, so if I don't remember, it didn't happen.
So do you frequent like haunted houses, like attractions?
Not usually. We've got some pretty good ones here in the area of Ohio I live in, but they're all like 45, $50. And I'm like, well, I understand why they're good, but I'm going to be waiting in line for hours and it's going to be cold and I'm going to be dropping $50 on a haunted house. And so it's usually like I'll just stay in and I'll just stay in and watch horror movies.
Yeah, that's fair.
I used to work um, or I used to volunteer at an amusement park up like in the kind of northwest part of Ohio.
Hmm.
And it was always during their like Halloween weekends. See, it's also going to be very hard to paint. And so I'd go through a couple of haunted houses there since I was already in the park working. Um, but no, I've never really been to like some of the big ones we have around here, like um the prison where they filmed Shawshank Redemption. Does a Halloween or a haunted house every year.
Okay. Yeah, I know Penhurst does, and I haven't been out that way yet. That's on my list to do, but I never seem to have the time because it's pretty far away from me. Um, and it's rather expensive to go do it. But I've been to Hershey Park. Opened up haunted attractions
Oh, nice.
in last year, and they added to it this year, and it's great. And I've had a lot of fun. I got the bejesus scared out of me. I used to be. It's really funny how much I love horror now because I used to be terrified of as a kid. Like I could not. I watched. I think I just watched horror movies way too young. Um, because I remember like Evil Dead wasn't bad because Evil Dead was more funny and campy, you know. So
Yeah.
like I could watch Evil Dead and being as young as I was, my parents, some of the bad words and things in that I wasn't going to understand, so it blew over my head. But that was fun, but I remember watching Final Destination. Um
I I almost watched that tonight.
Yeah, I remember I watched that way too young, and to this day there are still bits and pieces from Final Destination that like pop in my head that are just like, because everything that killed the people were just normal things that could happen. Granted, there were some that
Hmm.
were very supernaturally done, but like it's all basically normal things that could kill a person. Like I think the most ridiculous kill that still like scared me was the scene, and I cannot remember. I think it was from the first Final Destination, or it's from the second one. But the scene where the guy takes a shower and he's getting out and he puts his towel on and he slips on water that is leaked onto the floor, and for some reason the string clothesline in that's in some motel bathrooms was
Hmm.
strung out. Either he was going to put his clothes on there or whatever, but he slips on the water, gets caught in that clothesline, and somehow it wraps around his neck to choke him.
That's a completely rational fear to have.
I I watched that movie, and like the next week, we went to a motel that had one of those. And I just remember being in the bathroom. At every point I was in the bathroom, I was staring at that thing. I was just
Yeah.
staring like, you're not going to come to life and get me.
I think it's the second one, but I have a every time I'm behind like a logging truck,
Yes,
I'm like, maybe I'll back off a little bit and I'll just kind of let him go.
that is a generational thing I've
Yeah.
noticed. I have noticed people that are visibly younger than I am in the car that don't give a crap about those guys, and they will follow them super close. And then I see people like my age and a little bit older, they'll back up or like super fast past those guys. Like they do not, they're like, nope, I'm not being anywhere near this. And I'm the same way. I don't get anywhere near those. I make sure there's like several cars between me and that thing, or I pass it. The logging truck, if it makes you feel any better, was done digitally because they couldn't make logs do what they wanted practically.
Well,
Doesn't
I
mean it can't
appreciate that.
happen.
Yeah, it's still real to me, Nix.
Yeah, that's the problem. Nix also said, I conceptually love the horror genre for the themes and the exploration, but I am honestly no good at consuming horror media."
This is true.
That's
I
fair.
I try to get Nix to watch horror films every October.
I have a friend that I do the same thing with, and she always tells me she wants to. And she's like, "This year I'm gonna watch horror movies. We're gonna watch a horror movie." And then every time like we bring one up, we decide instead that we're gonna watch the thing that wasn't scary that was on the list to watch after the scary thing. And I'm like, something tells me you don't really want to watch horror, which I'm fine with. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But don't lure me into your house telling me we're gonna watch a scary movie and then lie to my face. I think I think my favorite horror movie, though, even after watching it a bunch of times, is probably John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh yeah. Or as I like to jokingly call it, Johann Tischler's Das Ding. Which if there's any Germans in the chat, I apologize. That is not how you would
Dusting.
say carpenter. I mean, that is the German word for carpenter, but that's not how you would
Yeah.
say his last name.
No. No, not at all, but it is funny.
But Das Ding is hilarious.
Yeah. Oh man,
Such a good movie.
it is, it still makes me uncomfortable. And I know what's going to happen. I've seen it several times and it still makes me uncomfortable.
About, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, I was at my like local gaming store and they were doing a Halloween game. And it was the thing. And let's see if I can get the stuff focus on him as I'm painting it instead of on my hand. But it was everybody was given a different part from the film, and you had to basically try to, if as best as you could, alter the events of the film. But I
Interesting.
had not seen the thing at that point, so I was playing the doctor, and I
Ah.
unwittingly died in the same way that he did, which was great. It was a blast. It was a fun game. I think the one thing that really just there was a player who was like determined to survive, and he wasn't a character that would have that survived that film, and
Yeah.
he got very upset when his character died gruesomely.
Oh. Yeah, I always felt bad for the dog scene.
Yeah.
Like the scene in the kennel always made me like I watch that scene and it's so grotesque and then I'm just like, oh no, the puppies.
Can't let the good boys down.
Yeah, not the puppers.
It's already starting to kind of come together.
Yeah, that's looking good.
Yeah, I'm debating like going back and doing some more on the bottom parts, but I think that's going to actually be fine if I don't give this guy a second wash. Um, oh, I need to hit the fronts of his hands. But yeah, I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm not even being any like really particularly neat about it. I'm just trying to hit the edges of the scales just to make them pop a little bit. And if I want to be kind of thorough, I can hit the underside of this hand here, which nobody would normally see unless they picked up the model and flipped it over. So, I could save myself a little bit of time there, or I could just kind of you could do it for completion's sake.
Nick
Sorry,
says I
these
love
are
her good snake Jim
they. I
Bros.
forgot that these were Jim Bros. All
Yeah, they're Jim
right.
Bros. They gotta work on the snabs.
Yeah. Oops. Best part about this step is like if you're still really kind of getting new to painting, or you're still really new to it and you're still getting used to it, if your paints are too thick and you just get a nice little like bright green glob on this guy, it's fine. It that scale is just a little bit brighter than the others. If you've got your paints a little bit too watery, that's okay too, because then they'll just kind of glaze over and you'll still get some of that initial like color from underneath shining through, and it'll be nice and easy. So you really can't like do this wrong at this step. Eventually, I will convince myself to try a type of metallic painting that doesn't use metallic paints. And that's where things can kind of go wrong if you don't do it right. But you just clean the model, reprime it, and try again. Snabs
Snabs
and
and
sniceps.
sniceps.
Yep.
I hate it, but I love it.
Yeah. I can't argue with it, but I want to.
Yeah, right? Nix, you just ain't right. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, of course, of course.
I've never been right.
Me either, but that's because I'm left-handed.
But you know,
This
working 8 hours in front of a front desk during a slow night, yeah, I can believe it. If it turns liminal, I'm sorry.
all hotels are liminal.
Well, yeah, but I meant more like actual liminal horror. Like back rooms. You start seeing monsters.
If a kid starts riding his tricycle down a hallway,
Mm,
you get the heck out of there.
mm-hmm. Those are good nights, liminal nights. I don't know why that just sounds like a disco rave.
Let's say it sounded kind of like a Three Dog Night cover band.
Liminal nights coming to a discotheque near you.
Das Discotheque?
Das discotheque.
My German is awful. My German teacher would be appalled at how bad I've gotten with it.
So, between my southern accent and the fact that I have two massive front teeth, at least I think they're massive, it's very hard for me to speak German, so every time I do, I feel like I have a lisp.
It's fair.
It's really bad, and I took like 3 years of of German, and it makes me very sad. Das Diskothek, das Boot, ja ja.
I uh I took I took 3 years of Latin and 2 years of German in high school. And when I got to college, my degree is in English education, and one of the courses I had to take at the time was like history of the English language. And one of the courses was a study and presentation on um, accents in England and the United Kingdom. And the only feedback I got about my Yorkshire presentation was it sounded like I was doing a Yorkshire impression of a from a German because I could not get the accent and I just kept falling into like speaking German. And I was like, I got nothing. I was like, I don't know what else to say here. Like, clearly I can't. I'm not from the area.
Mhm.
And I chose Yorkshire because all of the easy English accents were taken.
Yeah. I just don't try to do accents. I think I just end up making my own whenever I try. So I've given up. Um and I think the closest I get is probably a German accent, but that's only because of the German I've taken. Because they kind of teach it to you in like whatever my German teacher learned German in is kind of like the accent that they teach it to you in.
Yeah, my German teacher, his family is from southern Germany, so that was how he taught us German.
Yeah. Which
It's a lot
isn't
of
is it southern Germany that like the it's not as pronounced when you do like ich.
I believe so because I know like I think he was from like the Black Forest area,
Okay.
but he also studied at Heidelberg University and he taught at a an Air Force base. So like eventually I think most of his German got sort of mishmashed as he worked around the country,
Yeah.
but his family is from southern Germany.
Yeah,
The what
cuz oh, go ahead.
I said the wildest part though was when he was telling us about his younger sister who was adopted. She was adopted from Russia. So she was learning German and English, and both of them had had Russian lilts to them.
Interesting. That's something I'd like to hear.
Yeah, it was adorable when she came and visited us in class one day because she was like 20 years younger than him. Because his parents were like, yeah, we still, we're not done raising kids, I guess. And she came in and visited, and she spoke to us, and it was just really adorable to hear like a 8-year old speak German better than the rest of us.
Yeah.
We're like, well, we were feeling confident, and then this 8-year old told us that we don't know Jack.
Yeah, basically. I a guy I know learned German from his grandmother, who I believe was from southern Germany, and my German professor taught us the northern way, where like, because I remember every time I would talk to the other guy and I would practice my German with him, um, because he knows German but he doesn't use it, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because as his grandmother got older, she reverted back to speaking more German than English. So basically, if you ever wanted to talk to her before she passed away, you were speaking mostly German, which is the only reason why he kept his knowledge of it at all. So every time I would tell him, like, I would say something, he'd go, "Why are you pronouncing like the ch like so harshly? Like you're like that's not the way I've ever heard it." And I'm like, "Well, that's the way I've been taught. Is like you say nicht and you say ich and you say mich.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything has a harsh like." To it and he's like, yeah, no, everything in like I was taught is like you slur it in a sense, you just kind of it's just there. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Had a Spanish teacher in high school. She was not, obviously, since I took Latin and German. She was not my teacher, but she was like fluent in, I think at the time it was like 10 different languages. Um, but she was originally from Poland. So the way she was explaining it to her students is that like in her brain, it goes from Spanish to Polish to English
Well,
when she's trying to explain it to her students. They're like, what? A bunch of 14, 15-year-old kids are trying to understand one language, and she's sitting here translating it into three just so she can tell you the concept.
fascinating.
I kind of wish I had a better ear for languages.
Yeah.
I always get like kind of okay, and then I hit a like a pronunciation or a syntactical wall, and I'm just like, well, this was nice while I was learning it.
Yeah, mine. So I've kind of given up on French, but kind of, sort of, not really. Like I'm semi learning French because of a friend that I want to go visit uh over there. But I'm definitely trying to keep my German more than I'm trying to learn the French. But I have problems with German with just forgetting the changes from like accusative to dative to I forget what the other ones are. All the like you change like
Declensions.
yeah,
Yeah.
dare to dim or whatever. Like when do I do that? Why do I do that? What does it change to? That's where I get messed up. It's like I found that pronunciation was very easy. It was just like conjugating, or is that what it is? Conjugation?
Conjugating's for verbs, declining is for nouns.
Yeah. So it was doing that. That was the problem. Nick says, when I was considering school for voice performance, I was grappling with the fact that I was going to have to take a lot of language classes, not because I was expected to speak them, but because I had to sing like I spoke them, and I was very intimidated by the idea. Yeah, learning different languages through song was very difficult for high school me. I cannot imagine what a German speaker probably heard, or like a native German speaker heard whenever my entire high school choir had to sing Stille Nacht. Thirsty Bard says, Alf? Wasn't that the alien that ate cats?
Uh, so, yes, technically, that is not where I got the name from, but that was the alien that liked to eat cats from uh TV in the 80s.
I remember getting up in the morning for school, and that was on TV Land. Or was it TV Land? No, it was like Nicktoons or whatever.
I know TV Land probably have shown it, but wouldn't be surprised if, like, depending upon when, like what year, if that
Yeah.
Nick would show Alf in the mornings. I think there was also an Alf cartoon.
Yes, I think you're right.
Because I know that the Alf with the puppet was a nightmarish hellscape of a set, because they had to basically be able to let the puppet appear from almost anywhere. So there's like hit like just trap doors everywhere, and like boxes that the puppeteer could pop the puppet out from under, and like just a terrifying experience shooting that show. I think I'm gonna put a little pop of color on these arrow fletchings, but I'm not gonna do a whole lot. So I'm just gonna take some of the like orange that I had last week, and I'm just gonna try to get these painted. I'm not gonna care too much about them because, again, I just want to put some color on them so that they're painted. And then I can just give them a wash to give them a little bit of depth, and call it a day on those guys.
Could you imagine painstakingly trying to flit every feather?
So there are absolutely painters that do that.
Oof,
They
oof.
are they are much more skilled than I am. Um, and they are like professional painters. Actually, I think one of the people that I know that would probably be able to do that, I think he's actually painting right now, but I'm not gonna say his name because might drive people away from here, and I want you all to stay here.
Come watch the amateurs at work.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about 80s sitcom puppets and um horror movies and language learning in high school. The classic Twitch stream topics.
And also, dirty church Latin, as Nick says. I love dirty church Latin, though. Sang a lot of it, can muddle my way through a lot of weird root words because of it.
Yeah. I had so as part of my 3 years of Latin, um I went to a Latin convention. Um, it was a high school conference. It was a conference put on by I think it was the Ohio Junior Classical League, and it was basically high schools from around the state gathered in the capital once every other year, and you would like there would be like Latin based trivia events. You'd get to like speak Latin with other students. And I had transferred schools between my freshman and sophomore year. And junior year, when we went back to this convention, my Latin teacher from my first school was there, and the man was he had like a 20-minute conversation with one of my friends and I about the like how Latin would say things as opposed to how we would say things. So like if right now, if it was summer, if it was really hot in the room I'm in, I might say, "Hey, it's hot," and we would know what that would mean. But the way you would say it, like syntactically in Latin, was like, "It is hotter than it should be, or than it normally is," and he didn't get the concept across to us in English as one might expect. Part of the reason the conversation took so long is because he would only speak to my friend and I in Latin. And we're like trying to muddle our way through this essentially pop quiz from a teacher. Like, what? Like, man, we just want to get in line and get some dinner.
Yeah, right.
I I worked with one of the people that went to high school with that guy, and he was like he was like my first experience with that guy. He was a senior and I was a freshman, and he was walking down the halls of the high school reading a Mickey Mouse comic in Greek, laughing to himself because he was reading the jokes in these comics, and nobody else could understand what was happening.
Fascinating.
One of the wildest teachers I've ever met, um, and like an incredibly smart man, but also incredibly like eccentric.
I love it. I love it though. I love the
Mm-hmm.
eccentric teachers.
Oh yeah, like half the reason why I stuck with Latin is because I figured, oh well, clearly the rest of the Latin teachers have to be like this guy. Was not the case, but I would have stuck with 4 years of Latin and probably a little bit of college credit, but I took another course that was a little bit closer to what I wanted to do in college my senior year that just conflicted with AP Latin 4. And now I can't speak Latin at all.
Yeah.
Too long ago at this point.
Yeah, I wanted to learn German so much sooner, but like Spanish was the only thing that was offered to me in high school. Spanish and French were the only things that were offered to me in community college, and since I had already taken Spanish previously, I figured I'll just go through Spanish again because I'll have some of the knowledge still retained. Um, and then I like took 2 years off of college, and when I went to uh, Shippensburg University, my advisor sat me down and was like, well, you can go into Spanish 103 since you've already taken the beginner and intermediate course in community college. Those credits transfer over. And I looked them dead in the face and I said, hey, can I take German? I'll just start over from the beginning. And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? And so, like, all I had to do was take one German class to fulfill the fact that I took, like, 12, what is it, 9 credits in, because I had an associate's in arts, and you have to have, like, X amount of credits in language for
Mm-hmm.
some reason. I don't know why they make you take a certain amount of credits in language, but, yeah, all I needed was just, like, the first class, and I took 3 semesters of German because I was like, no, I want to learn.
Despite most of my classes being in the English department, I never had to take any language courses like the rest of my like English major compatriots did,
Interesting.
because I was an education major technically. So
Ah,
I was getting a bachelor's of science, and because of all of the like science and math related courses I had to take, they're like, well, he's not going to need language,
yeah.
which is fine by me because they only offered Spanish and French at my college until my super senior year when they added and Russian, German, and Korean.
Oh, neat.
And I was like, well, I've got one foot out the door. I'm as much as
Yeah.
I would love to.
I'm not starting now, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, precisely. I think my college had Spanish, French, German, and Mandarin.
Okay.
I think Mandarin. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was Mandarin because we were talking about how a lot of people wanted to learn Japanese, but they'd have to go to Penn State to do that. um, but it the language department was just so small, and I was surprised that there was like more than 3 courses available. Nick says that my high school offered only Spanish and French, and then stopped offering French because the only teacher we had for that language was had to retire due to a disease, like halfway through the school year. Oh God, that
Man.
stinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, my high school stopped offering French my second year there because they built another high school, and a lot of the teachers from uh the high school that I went to that high school instead. I don't know if it was a better pay grade or they just were like it's closer to home or what, but yeah, if I wanted to take French, I would have to. Technically, it wasn't that far. It was like a 15-minute drive to the other school, maybe 20 minutes. But they had built this school when I was in uh, elementary school, and then in middle school they've actually like opened the school, the high school. So all of my friends that I knew in elementary school before I moved, I was like, oh, I'll see you in, I'll see you at middle school, and then if we don't see each other in middle school, we'll catch back up in high school. And then that never happened because I was in a completely different school district.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was great. It real sucked, but hey, I made other friends.
Yeah.
That's what
That was kind of
Facebook is for.
I say that was kind of what happened to me, like switching schools. I was like, well, I'm gonna have to make friends all over again. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't really want to do that. But it ended up working out for the best because I still had like a core group of friends from I was in the Boy Scouts growing up, and so I still had a core group of friends from them or from that. But when I moved to the high school, it was like, okay, well, everybody, all of my new friends are in my homeroom, and now I am friends with their friends.
Yeah. I ended up, that's kind of what happened to me. So I moved from North Carolina to Pennsylvania in 2018. And I left a bunch of my North Carolina friends, which the only ones that I hung out with were actually ones that I made friends with post high school. Like, I was still friends with the people I was friends with in high school, but like, I hung out with people that I met in community college just
Hmm.
randomly at, like, I don't know, there were some people playing League of Legends, like, at a table in the middle of the in the
The
middle
student
of the
union.
yeah, in the student union, just like at a table, like a couple of them were playing League on their laptops, and I like came over, I'm like, oh hey, what's up? And we got to talking about video games, and then I became good friends with them, more so than any of the friends that I made in high school. Like, I still talk and game with some of them, and then I played Overwatch, and the majority of my friends are all online now. So it's like it's the weirdest thing how the internet has been the cause for most of my friendships now, and I don't know how I feel about it.
I'm in a very similar. I was in a similar boat for a while. After I got out of college, I still had like one or two friends from college, but most of the friends that I had that I would talk to regularly, I met through like tabletop wargaming and role playing games. And then one of my friends, um, uh, her and her spouse had a little tabletop wargaming company, and they sent me a message one day and they said, "Hey, how far is such and such city from you?" And I was like, "It's not that far. Why?" And they're like, "Well, somebody wants to learn how to play one of our games, and you're real close. Can you go like show them? Can you demo and show them how it's done?" And I go, "Yeah, sure, no big deal." And then I ended up like becoming friends with that person and hanging out with them. And if I could ever get him to come out of his house anymore, I'd still be gaming with him. But he's like, nah, I'm just he bought a house, and he's like, I just like taking care of my house and hanging out here. And so I don't blame him for that. But I'm like, dude, I haven't seen you in like 2 years. And so for a while, most of them, besides that guy, were all online. And then some of my like friends from high school have moved back to the area, so I've started gaming with them again. And but for a while, yeah, it was like, well, I guess I only have friends that are online, which is not bad considering like what happened 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, well, I've already got this circle of friends.
Yeah, exactly. The only problem is when it comes down to, well, I can't hang out with any of you people in person.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't game at the table with you guys.
Please move closer. I would like to roll dice with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I met Nyx through my wife. They were best friends, and then I think the first time I met Nyx, it was see, it was at a bar that served surprisingly good sushi. And Nyx was working on their D&D campaign.
Oh, neat. I don't know how I feel about the fact that you just said that a bar had surprisingly good sushi.
Well, so like it's it's cheap, which means it's like okay, it's either going to be incredible, and now I'm suspicious about um like the quality of the ingredients that I just had, or it's going to be awful. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that tracks. But like it was a like a good price is like I don't know, three maybe $4 for a decent like sized roll that had some accoutrements on it, and I was not expecting it. Like it from the outside it looks like a biker bar, and you walk in and it looks like a biker bar, but they've got a sushi chef in the back that's just making sushi rolls. So to answer the question in chat, I am painting some of these snake warriors. They are, if I can find the blister, they're from Reaper Miniatures. They're like Naga. They're not quite Naga warriors, but they're legally distinct Naga warriors. So we're just painting a couple of snake boys. Let me bring them a little bit down on camera. So whether you've got some snake people for your D&D game, or you need some reptilian beastmen for DCC, these guys will they'll work pretty well. So we're mostly just kind of like working on touching up some of the areas. Yeah, I can't copyright Naga because it's a term that exists. And I also don't know what happened to the piece of cardboard from the blister, or else I would just show what they're actually called. But they're Reaper miniatures. They're in their Bones line. They're kind of a flexible plastic that you don't need to prime, but I did anyways. And actually, they're starting to kind of come together pretty well. I think like at this point, what I would do is I think I just need to start working on metallics and probably wash the quiver again. So I'm going to do that real quick. Let's go for let's go for a light tone on this. Yeah, always. I mean, I tend to always prime anyways, but the really cool thing about the Bones models is that they don't technically require priming. But we ran into some issues with parts that did not get primed as well as others last week. The prime smells so good. I mean, I don't know about that. It's not the worst smell I've smelled in hobbying, but it's also not the best. I think resin takes the cake on that still.
Yeah, resin's really gross.
I have an indoor grow tent for quote unquote tomatoes. At least that's how it was marketed to me. But I have my resin printer in there, and it just vents directly to the outside because I bought my father-in-law a resin printer, and I had been taking like pretty good precautions. Like I had a mask, or when I'm going to be working with it for a while, I have a respirator. I have like a shirt that is my resin shirt, and I have long gloves, and I have rubber gloves, and so I've been generally fine. But I bought my father-in-law a resin printer for Christmas last year, the year before, and 2 years ago. So yeah, two Christmases ago, and he did not take as many precautions as I did, and started getting like um, allergic reactions to the resin fumes, and um, I was like, all right, I'm like with what I'm doing. I need to like readjust everything, change everything around because I do not want to start having those sorts of reactions. Please don't put him on blast. I'm not putting him on blast. He's that man put his story on Reddit, so he put himself on blast already. Um,
Oh, Reddit.
but yeah, so it was like very much a cautionary tale. Um, I did not want to run into any sort of issue that he had.
Yeah. I tried making, it wasn't with a resin printer or anything, but I tried making like little resin dice.
Hmm.
And the smell of the resin is terrible, and I remember that I did not buy gloves beforehand because I'm a silly sod. Um and so I'm playing with the resin, and I'm like, okay, as long as I don't like go in there with my hands and play with it like slime, I should be okay. Well, I got resin on like the tips of a couple of fingers, and I could not get that stuff off, and I actually had to go downstairs into the garage and get mineral spirits, and
Hmm.
that stuff stinks.
Yeah.
And it makes your hands smell for a week.
Um I've got denatured alcohol by like the gallon, and I just I use that for cleaning resin off my hands, in case it gets on me, off of my build plates. Um Cleans the models real well. But yeah, it's resin is like it's no joke. Um when I'm not painting minis or like watching horror movies, my day-to-day gig is in chemical regulatory compliance. So like safety data sheets for products and stuff. And the resin safety data sheets are nasty with like what they say can happen. Um which now in some cases they're a little like some companies will try to like over classify that kind of stuff because they're like, well, better safe than sorry. And then there's the other companies that are like, well, if we actually classify this as hazardously as it is, we'd have to pay a lot more to import it into countries. And it's like, okay, well, resin still pretty bad regardless of those takes. So, all
Yeah.
right. So what I'm doing right now is I grabbed a different wash tone. So like um for the quiver, I used this light tone, which is kind of like a little orangey um, shade. And then for like the leathers, the wood, the front scales, I used the soft tone, which is a kind of light brown wash. So these are both Army Painter washes. Like we kind of mentioned last week, you can use contrast paints, but the washes are a little bit better in terms of tinting the colors because they're going to get both speed paints or contrast paints are going to get into the crevices, but the washes are designed to like shade non-white surfaces. So we're just kind of tinting it, getting some shading going, and then I'm going to do metallics. And then I got to figure out what I might paint, because I did not think I was going to progress through these guys as quickly as I have today. So I might just grab one of the other models that I randomly have printed, or primed, I should say, because I see a couple of pre-paints, a couple of primed models, and one or two printed models. But basically, just going to kind of keep washing these down just to tint them. And then I have a nice 2-week long break to think about what to paint next. Because Michael Curtis and Brendan LaSalle will be doing their Keep Crawling next Monday at this time. Does that mean, so if they're doing one, oh wait, no, never mind. I was thinking of Mauve Mike. So,
Yeah.
okay. So actually, next week, Mauve Mike. So it's going to be 3 weeks.
Yeah, basically.
Nice.
So I think it's November 6th is the first Monday
Yeah.
of November, so that'll be Mauve Mike. Keep Crawling is next Monday for their Halloween special.
I hope it's sufficiently spooky.
Oh, knowing them, it probably will be.
Okay. All right. So these guys still need a little bit of time to dry, especially because where I'm going to be painting is um, is still wet with the wash. So I guess what we can talk about is, I guess, sort of colors of the metallics. And I guess we can talk a little bit about I guess we can talk a little bit about like undercoating the metallics. So I'm going to use this, the guy with the halberd here. So the metallics that I'm going to try to pick out is definitely going to be the blade here. Let me move that up a little bit because it's getting blocked by our image. There we go. So it's going to be the blade here. There's like some filigree or some like raised parts on the halberd. Um, I'm going to try to probably hit that with maybe like a gold. I'll do the blade in sort of a silver color. And then there's a couple of pieces on the chest where the armor is, both on like the back of the shoulder and on the chest part. And I'll probably try to do that for both of the models. So I'm gonna grab my metallics. Dark silver, and we'll do white gold. Then copper. Okay. So what I'm thinking of for the gold pieces is, like we did kind of earlier with some of the browns, is I have this, I've got bronze and I have copper. And what I can do with them is base the bronze is the lowest color, and then pick out the tops, like I did with the scales with the copper. So we'll use the browns that we base coated the model with to be our undercoat, to kind of help sort of fill in kind of the patchiness that you can get with metallic paints. So hopefully that'll give us a nice like color contrast or add a little warmth to the model. And then for the silver, what we're going to do, which will probably be the blade and maybe the back metal piece here on the shoulder. But we're going to do a dark silver as our like low tone. We'll do silver as kind of like the mid, and then we'll just pick out the edge with this like white gold. So that should give us a nice sort of like plan forward. Let me see who's a little bit more dry at the moment. I think it's going to be this guy. That blade looks pretty dry, and everything else is starting to look dry. So we'll let our archer rest for a little bit, and I'm going to bring my wet palette over. All right, so go ahead, shake up my silver. And then I will go ahead and get my other. hopefully, hopefully you're the judge, and it's something your players won't want to have a fight with. All right, and I'm not going to do any mixing with the white gold, so I'm going to actually just keep it kind of separate, because what I really want to do is I really just want the white gold to sit at the very edge highlight of the blade. So we'll go ahead and just put that guy over here where I'm not going to mix it with anything. I am also the GM for 99% of the time, so I feel you there. All right, so just kind of gonna see how this. If I want to just do pure dark silver, if I want to mix them. You know what? Let's do a mix. See if we can kind of mix it to get a little bit both. Yeah, that looks good. And then if there's anything I want to take darker, I can use the dark silver. If there's anything I want to take brighter, I can use the regular silver. So I know a lot of what I've been doing earlier tonight and also last week has been very just kind of rough shod, just get the color onto it. At this point, though, what I'm trying to do is actually be kind of careful and just sort of apply the paint to the raised areas so that I don't get a whole lot of it into that crevice on the blade. So what I'm hoping I can do with that is that'll give me either something that I can maybe go in with like a different color. Like let's say this is more than just a Naga warrior. Let's say maybe it's like the big bad of the adventure. I could put some bright colors in there and maybe imply that this is magical. I could put a sort of a different color wash in there to change the color, or I can just kind of go back over this with pure dark silver and really just kind of fill in that crevice with that color. Oops. So, what were you streaming tonight? About just some of the armor pieces. Yeah, Nix, they do have a Blue Sky account. Should just be Goodman Games on there. It might be Goodman Dash Games. Did your GM let you do that?
I mean, I'd want a Naga
Oops.
hide jacket.
I mean, I would too. Really hard to get that focus on that shoulder pad. Just a little bit too bright. Clean off my brush. I can do a layer of the regular silver. Now, just like what I did with the tans and the front scales, is I'm actually going to just put this in uh more of a singular spot. I'm just going to kind of try to keep it close to the blade, so that I can really kind of make that distinction. Hopefully it's a little hard to see on the camera. Let me see if I tilt it. There you go. So you can kind of see the contrast that I'm making between the two different silvers. And then what I will do is I will just kind of pick out the very edge of the blade with that white gold. Ran an easy D6 horror one shot. Okay, if it was a horror one shot, who or what was the monster? Seems updating the text of the adventure. Okay. Updating the text. That sounds fun. I've never played Easy D6. But I do love horror one shots. Out the sort of the top part of the armor plate here, leaving a little bit of that darker silver underneath it, which did not come up on stream. So let's see if that'll. Turn this light back on. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I mean, yes, probably, but I never do because I'm not here to do everything correctly. It's just easier for me. My brushes, I don't buy like super expensive ones. So I kind of use them and abuse them, and then when I'm done with them, they become terrain brushes. I usually, what I try to do though, if I'm going to be doing non-metallics and metallics on the same model, metallics are almost always the last thing I do, so that by the time I'm doing the metallics, I don't have to worry too much about like any metallics from my paint water getting onto something that wouldn't be metallic. But yes, generally speaking, you should probably use a different brush for your metallics than your non-metallics. We have hit 10:30 because all the lights in my nerd room just shut off.
The hallway light is on a timer, and I saw it in my room like dim, and I'm like, 10:15. And it'll go even darker, or it'll dim even more at like 11:30, and then it'll go out completely at like midnight.
This guy is going to probably have a lot more in the way of golds, but so anything that I'm going to pick out with silver is going to be a lot more finer. So let me switch brushes real quick. Let's see. This was a creature called Geshnulgar. Appears out of a very thin vertical light from another dimension. Oh, okay. That sounds like a terrifying monster to fight. Does sound really cool though. I think I'm going to paint this little like sun pattern here with silver on the outside and gold on the inside. Just do kind of roughly a little rough job here. Not going to be super careful. All right, and then you know what? Let's add a little like extra detailing here. We're going to make this piece of his bracer metal. And I think I want the rest of that to be gold on that. So, all right. So we're done with our silver. Actually, nope, I need to highlight this up. So we'll go ahead and just put a little line of that bright silver right on kind of the highest part of these parts. That sounds terrifying. Latches onto a victim from behind with about a dozen claws, a barbed tail snaking under and up. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh. That part, that's the part that got me too when I was reading
Yeah.
it.
That's where I decided that it was safe to read if you were watching the chat, but it was like, oh, we've hit PG-13 and
Yeah.
might want to but that sounds disgustingly terrifying, and I hope your players have that same feeling
Yeah.
when they fight it or when they run from it like cowards.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely running.
All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and paint the blade. Let's move that up a little bit again. So I just wanted to grab like the tip, the highest edge of that blade with the white gold. Probably not something that shows up well on camera, um, but it's going to be that nice little like added touch for my players. I wonder if it'll come through from this angle. Yeah, you can kind of see it. And that's all that it needs to do. It just needs to have like a little bit of a glare to it. Something to just let the players know, or to let someone looking at the model know that what they're seeing is, you know, nice sharp blade. All right, so go ahead and start picking out our golds, or I guess our bronze and our copper. And then what I can do is I can just kind of put a little base of color and call these guys done, or there's actually a lot more that I can do to add just a little bit of extra flair to their bases. But I'm probably not going to, since these are going to be monsters and they're not characters. I'm probably just going to paint the bases black, and then kind of call them done. So I'm unlike with the silvers where I mixed the dark silver and the light silver. I'm just going to keep the copper and the bronze separate, but I am going to go ahead and use them to kind of pick out some of the colors on the bow, the halberd, and some of the other like connecting pieces. All right, so we'll start here. Just grab some of that bronze, and we're just gonna just start kind of just sort of putting it on the model, onto these raised pieces on the halberd. So there's a couple of these like raised spots. And then I'm going to pick out the thing that's connecting his shoulder straps. Just going to pick that out in the bronze. And just make sure I'm not missing anything else on here that I want to pick out. A little bit, kind of green, but there's that embossed part there. And then way underneath here, just for a little extra flair. Get a snack and watch a movie. Well, I hope you have a snack's good, and I hope you have a good rest of your night. Other buddy here, just got a little bit more, because there's basically all of this is gonna be something I want to hit with the bronze and the copper. So we'll hit that piece there.
No,
And
Nix,
then,
you can't go home yet.
no, you can't. You've got 20 minutes, buddy. And then I'm gonna go to bed so I can take my wife to the airport at 3 in the morning.
Oh, Jesus. What are you doing up?
Painting. I'll be fine.
That's what energy drinks were made for.
Mm-hmm.
See, my problem is I would not be able to go, like, wake up on time, so I'd just stay up the rest of the night and just chug monsters on the drive.
I have considered that for similar things in the past, but I know that if I did that, I would probably not be very equipped to drive back, which would only be a problem, or which normally wouldn't be a problem if I wasn't driving to the airport that's an hour away instead of the airport that's 15 minutes away.
Ah, fair enough.
But yeah. All right. Yeah, that's looking pretty good.
I think my worst time ever driving back somewhere was I worked a concert and I lived 3.5 hours away from the venue that I was working at.
Oof.
And I had worked from 6, or I had been up since 6 in the morning to get there at 9, and worked all day, with no, like, nap break or anything. Like, I worked load in, show call, and load out. And load out didn't end until, like, 1:30 in the morning.
Oh, geez.
And I stopped and got a monster on the way back. It was in the middle of February, so I had the windows rolled down to keep me cold so I would stay up, and I still nearly fell asleep on the interstate.
There have been a couple of times where I've had that sort of thing happen. I used to go to hockey games 2 hours away in Columbus, and the team that I would go root for would only ever be there on like a Tuesday night. So it's like, well, I guess I'm gonna call off work tomorrow because I'm not gonna get home until at least 1 a.m., depending upon how bad traffic is.
Yeah.
And so eventually, I just stopped going to those games.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is too much.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Right.
I have issues with that. Like, I always think that I can do more than I can, and then it happens where I'm like on the drive back and I'm like falling asleep. I'm like, all right, never again. Nope. I've learned my lesson this time, and then I do it anyway.
Yeah, never again until the next time I do it.
Yeah, exactly. See, you get it.
These guys are almost done. Yeah. Right. So at this point, I think both of these guys are just about what most people would call like tabletop ready. So in like old wargaming standards, it was usually 3 colors in a wash. So we've got a couple different greens, a couple different metallics, some browns. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint their bases so that they look like they weren't just in the middle of being painted. And so that's just going to be a layer or two of black, just applied with basically no thinning. So it's just kind of just take the brush and paint it. This is something that I could do while it was still on the holder, but I wanted to make sure that I was getting the lip of the base. And I'm also not as on camera as I would like. So I'm basically just kind of cleaning up. Now there are some pieces on this base. There's like a couple of rocks that I could paint, but at this point I'm pretty happy with where these guys are. And if I try to futz with them anymore, I might mess them up. And that's usually when I know that I am at a stopping point on a paint job. Where if I kept going, there's a chance I screw everything up. I have to start over. Or I can paint the base and call it a day. One of the things that we'll probably do in like the next one of these is probably show you how to do some basing, which can just be a nice little way to like add some flair to the models. Adds a little extra character, gives you an idea of maybe like what they were doing, how they're fighting. Basing's really big in like the wargaming community because you can theme your models to like a specific battlefield from the fiction, and just it's a real nice way when you've got a lot of models to really add like cohesion to them. But for a couple of monsters that are going to be in the dungeon, it's black bases, no biggie.
Nick says basing is big in the wargaming community because they spend trillions of dollars on minis, so they want them to all look nice.
You're not wrong, Nix.
Yeah. I knew a friend in the past who was a big wargaming fiend, and like just the amount of money he would spend, and I could not understand it. My brain just went, but why?
I play a marble tabletop skirmish game, which is war game but with less models, and I try not to think about how much I have spent on it because if I did, I would go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, even with like games that are like low model count, um, are free rules, it's still like you could potentially be asking a lot um, of any player. Like I think one of the cheapest war games I played in recent memory is a rule set called Gaslands, which is like Mad Max and Death Race, but on the tabletop, where your entry point is like just a Hot Wheels car. You just need a couple of Hot Wheels and you paint them up to look grimy and gross, and you're good to go. So I've got like an ice cream truck that I'm painting up soon. But that's not why we're here. We're here for these lovely snake boys who are fully painted, ready to go. So what I would do at this point is I would probably I'm gonna let them like fully dry because the black is still a little wet, and then I would seal them so that the paint job doesn't chip. That if they get knocked over while we're playing, um, they will still they'll still keep the paint job. They'll still be fine. But at this point, I could paint a couple more of these guys if I wanted to throw more than just the two at my players, but this is a good, it's basically the start of an encounter right here. Throw a few more in, throw a couple other monsters I have, and now I've got something my players might be afraid of. So I think at this point, it's about it's a little after 10:45. a little after 10:45. So I think that is where I'm going to call it.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
And we'll be back with more painting November. Oh gosh, what is that? The
13th.
13th? 13th. Awesome. Have a good night, everyone.